Welcome to MSUA's Game Changers Live, where we speak with satellite and mobile connectivity thought leaders about industry trends, new technologies, and share what you need to know about the future of satellite mobile connectivity. I am your host for today, Lisa Dreer, and I'm really excited to introduce our guest for today, Vishal Patil. He is a consultant at Euroconsult. Welcome to the show, Vishal.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Really looking forward to our conversation today. And thank you so much for inviting us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for making time for it. Maybe we can start by having you give a little bit of background on yourself and Euroconsult.
Yeah, sure. My name is Vishal, and I'm working with Euroconsult since last 4.5 years now. And my domain of work really revolves around the mobility segment and the satellite connectivity related to the mobility segment, meaning I am pretty much involved in maritime satcom services as well as in-flight connectivity for that matter. And to talk a little bit about the Euroconsult, so Euroconsult is very well known um, industry leader in the aerospace consulting side of the business, and company has more than 35 years of experience in the industry. So and it's quite well known company. The company has four main pillars of activities, uh, mainly business consulting, research that like we have more than uh, a dozen of research products, and then it's the events that we conduct every year on an international scale, and then it's trainings and workshops. So these are the four main pillars. So yeah, that is really in brief about the company.
Excellent. So I understand that you guys just completed a maritime satellite solutions study, and I really wanted to talk a little bit about what you learned from the study that you did. And maybe we can talk about what came out of the study in terms of what the trends will be over the next 3 to 5 years for maritime satellite connectivity.
Yeah, sure. So we annually publish this report, which is market intelligence report on satellite connectivity markets on maritime segment. So we do publish that report every year, and we released this year's report in the month of April. So it's pretty new. It's pretty new report, and I would really like to share kind of key findings that you have asked. And what we have seen is, despite being impacted even in 2021 due to pandemic, there were several surges of new cases, new variants throughout the world. The maritime industry actually showed some positive trends, which was really good. And what we have seen is that the I mean, the impact of COVID was impacting really the supply chain, and even it was the case for most of the world. The connectivity and the installations did not stop. They were still continuing. The service providers and probably entire value chain was trying to figure out the way around the situation and the problems. So in all, the market was quite positive on that side.
Mhm.
So what we have seen is, some of the markets, those were impacted more than the others. Those markets showed some signs of recovery. For example, passenger ship market, cruise ships, those were like impacted to a larger extent.
Yes.
Despite that, they showed some kind of like positive trends. There were many sailings in 2021, so it was a good trend. It's always a tricky question to know whether they were deployed on full capacity, but still
Right.
there were some sailings, so which was quite positive. As well as what we have seen was there was a 32% increase in the total VSATs installed in 2021, which was really good as compared to the year before. So it
Yeah.
was
Do you think that that was impacted by the fact that maybe some ships were in port for a longer period of time and maybe there was more time to install?
uh yes, definitely, it's one of the factors that they had more time. But to be honest, if we have to think about the majority of the market, which was merchant shipping was not that impacted because of the pandemic, because of the demand, or because aviation sector was impacted to a larger extent.
Mhm.
So some of the load was carried by the merchant shipping when it comes to trade and goods transport. So definitely, the merchant shipping was not impacted, but the the other segments which were impacted more, they could also show some positive trends and could facilitate the installations. So
Hmm.
that was really interesting to see in the last year. And also, the only thing was because uh like high ARPU, let's say high ARPU segments like passenger ships or leisure vessels, those were impacted because of these multiple surges of
Mhm.
new cases. So overall service revenues did not increase as compared to pre-COVID levels, but it could, I mean, there was a positive trend there as well. So
Hmm.
according to our study, we saw that it was single digit growth, but then there was a growth in the service revenue side, which is also a positive trend, and which is really, uh, I would say, really a good thing to see, despite so many like different uh, insecurities or uncertainties at this point of time. So those were really interesting trends that we saw. Apart from that, there were some like financial restructuring that we all saw. I mean, in 2020 and 2021, there were like many uh, industry leaders in providers side. They just gone through different level of financial restructuring. Some of them were acquired, some of them were merged, some of them were came out of like chapter 11 bankruptcy very well. So
Mhm.
on that side also, it was really interesting to see those consolidations happening, and the partnerships being signed. So yeah, you know I mean, all in all, it was really a positive year for maritime satellite connectivity market
Hmm.
on that side. Yeah.
Fascinating. Did you look at then what the trends may be in the future and how I guess what has happened over the last year or two may impact the future?
Yes, definitely. I mean, our report essentially mentions the forecast 10 years ahead from this, like let's say 2021.
Mhm.
So we definitely have a kind of like understanding of what the future will be. And what we saw definitely is the future will be mainly impacted by this new capacity that is going to be there in the future. When we talk about 3 to 5 years, that is exactly the time when we will see, or we are expected to see, a massive growth in the capacity because of new satellites. Those will be launched, as well
Mhm.
as from the NGSO constellations. That, I mean, it's really interesting because 2 years down the line, or 2 years ago, people were just talking about NGSO constellations. Everything was on paper, right? There were no
Yes.
satellites deployed. Last 2 years, there were thousands of satellites those were deployed. So the whole way of thinking around this NGSO constellations has shifted now. So people are really excited to see what it can bring to the market. And 3 to 5 years is probably exactly the timeline where most, or let's say at least some of them, will have their services for the maritime industry,
Mhm.
and then it will definitely impact the capabilities that can be explored with that amount of capacity being available.
Mhm.
And there are collateral things that will also change in terms of like equipment, in terms of new uh, value added services. I mean, value added services is quite an interesting topic, because when you have a massive amount of capacity that is available,
Mhm.
that you can use, and eventually the cost will be decreased because of availability of this capacity, so supply will be more. And because of that, what will happen is everybody can afford to provide a certain level of capacity or certain level of services.
Mhm.
Now the tricky question will be to top up on that. So what service providers can do to stand out? So there, I think these value added services part will play a major role, where they will have to, or they will try to differentiate their services with the help of these value added services, specifically cloud applications or
Mhm.
cybersecurity. Or
Sure.
I mean, there are n number of possibilities that will be open because of the availability of the capacity and the reduced cost, of course. And what
Yeah.
what we have also seen is this will be triggered on, I mean, let's say parallelly with with the regulations, where the regulations will be more crew centric, or let's say on the operational side as well. I mean, we have seen satellite based AIS or LRIT, or like all these operational requirements which are triggering or which are driving the requirement for satellite capacity or satellite connectivity for that matter.
Mhm.
So all these things will definitely demand more capacity. So there will be demand for capacity, and at the same time there will be supply. So what we look at it is definitely a brighter picture in the future.
Right, right. How do you think that this will impact pricing for the actual user, business user community? What impact will the additional capacity have?
uh, so there, as we look at it, there will be definitely a fair amount of impact on the capacity pricing, uh, as there will be, let's say, like new technologies, even on the geo side, and definitely there will be capacity through NGSO, which will drive the capacity pricing down. There will be an impact of that on the user side as well, where users will get probably more amount of data if required in the same budget. As we all know, maritime
Mhm.
industry is, to a certain extent, it's a cost driven industry. So for example, merchant vessels or merchant vessel operators, they have specific budget for a month or a year, and they wanted to just make most of it within that budget, limited budget. So when there will be reduction in the capacity cost, they will be able to get either more bandwidth in the same cost that they are paying per month, or they can reduce. If they want same bandwidth, then the cost for them will be reduced. So they will be benefited anyways because of this reduction in the capacity cost.
Sure. Did you see anything related to using different satellite networks for different use cases or different requirements? So, for example, are some of the commercial maritime companies looking at how do we use, maybe HTS satellites for certain types of things and NGSO maybe for other types of use cases when you're talking about, I don't know, you needing lower latency, for example, and that NGSO would provide that better than maybe an HTS satellite. Do you see any differences there or use cases that would apply?
Yes, there will be a demand specific to the needs of the user.
Mm-hmm.
And you rightly mentioned, when we talk about NGSOs, the main benefit that we look is low latency, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where you need to send data in the real time, or whether you need really I mean applications that will require probably real time data uh, transfer, those applications will be definitely shifted to NGSOs where that possibility is there. Also, it depends on the coverage as well, because geo we know geo satellites above certain latitudes, it's not that, like, effective. So at that
Right.
point of time, NGSOs will play a significant part there. Whether the expedition cruises, for example, they go right, up to North Pole or South Pole, where they will require, or they will be probably the ones who will look for or demand for this NGSO capacity. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously it depends on the use cases, as well as, I would say, the area of their activities.
Got it.
So yeah.
So how is all of this actually impacting also the ground stations and the hardware, terminals that these maritime operators are using? Obviously, they are operating in pretty tough environments with salt water and many times and things like that that really require the hardware to be appropriate for these environments. Are there new hardware offerings that are coming onto the market that folks in the maritime industry should know about?
Uh, it's a good question. We do track terminal side or equipment side in our report, and when we research for the report, definitely we try to get a fair amount of understanding of what is happening in that area. And
Hmm.
what we have seen in the last year is, uh, so on the development of new terminals, there are a lot of activities that are happening around that, because of this new technology or new NGSO technology that is coming in. So there is, let's say, there is a group of equipment manufacturers. Those are targeting to to have these capabilities, to target only NGSOs. There are group of equipment manufacturers, those are targeting to have like multi-orbit, multi-band capabilities.
Hmm.
There are already multi-band capabilities, those we have seen in the terminal side, where we have dual band antennas or tri-band antennas for that matter. So
Hmm.
it is already there, but then there are developments which are going towards the multi-orbit, multi-band capabilities. Having said that, there is obviously, what we have seen in 2021 was, the antenna manufacturers and service providers were keen to target the untapped market, which is the lower end of the market. So we see couple of, what we saw is couple of manufacturers uh, actually brought their smaller antennas in the market, smaller VSATs in the market,
Hmm.
to specifically address those, lower end market. So that was really interesting, because that had never happened in the past. And
Hmm.
now we saw some of the antenna manufacturers coming up with smaller diameter antennas, which are smaller in size, lightweight, and probably cheaper as compared to other full scale antennas, probably. And then that can be deployed on the untapped market, or the market which are cost sensitive for that matter. So it was really interesting to see that dynamics changing in the last year as well.
Wow, amazing. Okay, so is there anything that we haven't hit on that you want to make sure that we share with our audience today?
Uh, what? I can say that there were a few highlights that we saw in the last year, and that will be part of future as well. We have addressed them like really briefly. One is consolidations. We have seen a lot of consolidations, financial restructuring, mergers and acquisitions happening. And
Hmm.
what we think is this will continue, this trend will continue in the future. So this is one point that is really important to mention. Second thing that we saw was, due to certain reasons or the things that happened in the past and what is happening now, we have seen that certain regions in the world were witnessing some congestion, bandwidth congestion, or like capacity congestion.
Hmm.
If due to whatever reason, if this new capacity deployment is delayed, then there is potential fear of increase increasing this congestion, especially I would say Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico region, where a lot of activities, especially on the passenger shipping side,
Hmm.
w- are happening and were happening in 2021. So it's quite possible that there will be, as we come out of this COVID-19 situation, and as we pass that sanitary restriction measures, there will be a demand, there will be a lot of cruise ships deployed, and people will want to go on the cruise ship for whatever reason. So definitely there will be a congestion. So that is one point. And second thing, and probably the last thing that is quite interesting is that NGSOs will bring in a kind of like drastic change in the entire ecosystem, as we see.
Ah. Well, fascinating. Vishal, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your insights on the maritime satellite industry. It's been really enlightening, and I feel like we have so much more to dig into. So hopefully you can join us again in the future.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you. It was really pleasure to talking to you.
Absolutely. And I do want to take a moment to thank the Mobile Satellite Users Association for hosting these sessions. You can learn more about the Mobile Satellite Users Association at MSUA.org and learn all about our new award that we are working on with Euroconsult. We have a Visionary Leadership Award that we are now taking nominations for. This is in celebration of MSUA's 30th year anniversary this year. And we'll be announcing the winner of the Visionary Leadership Award during Euroconsult's World Satellite Business Week this year in September. So at their 25th anniversary gala. So definitely visit msua.org to learn how you can become a member and learn how to um, nominate companies for this Visionary Leadership Award. Thank you so much for being here today.